right.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Excellent.
All right. Well, I guess I'm just starting the Socratic discussion. All right. So my part would be, I guess a question that I have would be, how do you think maybe this first source, the Women in Hollywood source, how do you think that relates to The Great Gatsby and the characters that you've seen so far, the female characters that you've seen so far? And then do I just toss it to someone?
Yeah, who's got it? Who wants it? Tessa.
All right, Tessa.
So we're talking about source A, right? I think the first source. Okay, so I would think it relates to The Great Gatsby and how these people like flex their money, how they have their money. Mainly focusing on like Tom Buchanan and his house that he has. Because also in the book, besides in the source, he talks about like he flew in polo horses all the way from the Midwest. Like who would do that? That's the type of money he has at our age. Like that's ridiculous. And just like the source says, if we had their money, we think we wouldn't spend it on hideous hotel suites and closets full of wigs, or houses with all these windows that aren't ever going to be open, that have to constantly be cleaned, or these polo horses that are only for polo, even though he's learning how to do polo. Just like pointless things that we would say we would never do if we had that type of money. And I just think it's kind of interesting because we don't know what we would do if we had that type of money because we've never had that type of money. So, but it's also kind of nice to see people make stupid choices with their money, because then it reassures us, like, even though we don't have that, at least we're not that stupid to spend our money on that. And we just do it to make ourselves feel better, to convince ourselves that, hey, yeah, we're good, we're okay, we don't need that money. We wish we did, but we don't. You weren't.
I wasn't looking. Another thing about how Tom, it says when rich people we actually envy turn out to be criminals. It's not a criminal, but he cheats on his wife a lot. So saying the whole thing that we're talking about is like why the public is so obsessed with the rich. I think like it also turns like into the thing that it's not always as what it seems, and you know, like money doesn't buy happiness. I guess that cliche thing. Yep.
Yeah. So I think I like source A because it kind of just talks about the positive, instead of talking about how like it's a reminder of how poor we are and how we have like no money and all that. It's a reminder that like, you know, of our good values, and like even if we aren't super rich and stuff, like we're hardworking and like deserving and grateful and all that. And I feel like what we see on like social media and TV and all of that like kind of relates to our like how we see, pretty much how we interpret it, like rich people and I don't know how they live and stuff like that. And like it says in the prompt, like The Wolf of Wall Street and then Crazy Rich Asians, like you don't see the stories about poor people all the time, and like you only see that kind of relates to our obsession with rich people and things like that. So yeah. Anybody? Other questions?
Or source. Yeah, we're talking about source.
Yeah, that relates to source E, I guess, the essay by Chris Hedges, because he was talking about the media and like reality TV and stuff like that. Let me go to my highlights. Yeah, it's just like how the rich see poor people as like parasites, I think, as he said it, but when in reality it's like the other way around, because like rich people are bad to the economy because they own whatever like half percent it was, or half the wealth. And then like even during the pandemic, like they were the ones who continued to make money, and like millionaires were becoming billionaires, but then like poor people were becoming even poorer and everything like that. So
another thing about how like they like ruin the economy is that it all started like with like Reaganomics and everything, and about how he like deducted taxes with the 1% and was like, I'm not going to put as much money to me because I trust them that they'll give back to the community.
the trickle down thing, wasn't that good?
Yeah. But they didn't, and they just invested it to get richer. And so it all started with that. And so obviously if
the person who made the money didn't give back to the community, then it didn't do it for them, so why should I do it? Like, I think that's what gets into the millionaires, or are there billionaires? Yes, there's billionaires. Yeah. Billionaires' minds, and that puts a big toll on like how the wealthy are portrayed. And I think they try to reverse that with these reality TV shows where it's like, oh, we're just minding our own business, but the real like morals behind it and what they're actually doing isn't really anything good.
Another really good source for that, or like around this topic, is source D. Well, because it's by a psychologist, he's pretty credited. He wouldn't write anything very unprofessional, so it's a pretty good message. It's pretty unbiased because it's just talking about like factual information, and it's from a trusted source. And he talks about how, you know, we see all of this stuff on reality TV with all their money, flexing their money, but that also is because now greed is seen as okay. It's normal. It's an everyday thing we view on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Real Housewives, any of those shows. We just see that like, okay, yeah, they have money, we won't, whatever. You know, we're just coming to terms with it because it has been so ingrained in our society that like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Unless you're like a really crazy rags to riches story, it's not gonna happen. And that this article talks about it, and it also talks about how it's been normalized through politics, and how he uses a quote from Obama like, oh yeah, I know those guys, they're great people, but you don't really know them, and then it makes us feel like, okay, well, he trusts them, we should trust them. And that also ties into Chris Hedges' essay, but his is more biased and personal, so if you didn't want to really use that completely, you could also use this source D, because it helps support his case and yours if you're talking against what we're talking about, or if like you're going for like against the rich. You can use him to support another thesis where it appears too biased and too personal. So if you wanted something more professional and unbiased and clear, you could use source D.
And to roll off on like greed being normalized, I remember me and my friend were having a conversation with this guy. We were talking about how like if people genuinely just gave back, then it would be okay. And, like if people just shared instead of taking it all. And like the guy's argument was that humans are born with greed. And it's odd because they're not, but it's just so normalized that like the human race is greedy because like money has been, what's the word? I can't think of the words. Bless you. It's like when it's seen as like everything that you want. It's like, oh my God. Glorified. Thank you. Like being wealthy is like, where did they say it about the YouTubers thing?
Oh.
It was like, that's all people want right now is to be like the wealthy YouTuber because they see, yeah.
Yes, it's source B.
Yeah, it's like the impressionable 18 to 19 people who are largely tuning in to like be these social media stars. And like we see it every day because like half of probably the school, more than half, is like on this app TikTok, and they see that like, oh, people our age are getting famous, why can't I? And like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. And so it's so glorified right now, and then but it just becomes greedy, and then you start treating people bad, like in Chris Hedges, because you're like, oh, I have all this money, I'm better than you, and so blah, 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 blah. So I don't even remember what the question was.
No, you were providing commentary.
Yes, that's what I was doing. Anybody have it? Yeah.
So, kind of like off what you were saying about like 18, 29-year-olds, I think that most people like nowadays see people who like inherit money from their families, and then they can like build that off and make more money through the money that they already inherited, and they kind of just like want that easy money and don't really want to work for it. And so I think that's like kind of part of the reason why people are getting into like YouTube and all these other things, because they think it's like a lot easier to get money faster. And but yeah, that's it.
Because like what you're